Welcome into the DNVR Broncos podcast on this fabulous Friday edition. I'm your host, Zac Stevens, joined by my guy, Andre Simone. I cannot wait for this show. I can't wait to tell you about our friends over at DraftKings Sportsbook, our presenting sponsor of this show, where you can get $150 in free bets by placing a $5 money line bet either on the Warriors or the Celtics tonight. And you don't even have to choose the right team. All you have to do is place that $5 bet on either of them, and you'll get $150 in free bets over at DraftKings Sportsbook by using the code DNVR. So check them out. My boy, Dre, what is going on, my friend?
Popping on with you, Zach. Like being a new user at DraftKings Sportsbook, I just get to hop on. I know I'm not going to lose, but even if I would lose, just being with you is a win in itself. Producer Kale back here, just with my guys. Ryan, be damned. Have fun on the golf course, and watch out for gators. I forget if he's on a golf course where gators might have to be in play.
He's on a golf course. I think he's still in Colorado, so I hope gators aren't in play, or else, Dre, wild. I may be transferring to PHNX.
Hell yeah. Great
I would think that Phoenix is a little too hot for gators.
You would assume way too dry. We're just too dry for gators. Sorry,
I guess it's the dry part because gators love Florida, and right. I'm not messing with that at all. And Dre, speaking of that type of climate, this morning I was thinking, when was the last Dre pod I did where it was just you and I? And I was taken back to a hotel room just above Bourbon Street.
So true.
What was it? February of this year. Right, you were sitting on one bed. I was sitting on another bed. And I don't remember what we were talking about, but it got off the rails. The whole thing was wacky. We were cracking up. And it was right before we hit the town on Bourbon Street, so we hadn't even had a few drinks, and all I remember is that pod was just off the chains.
Well, yeah, you're right. That would be the last one-on-one pod we did, and that was an all-timer. So if those of you who heard that one are ready for more, we've got a good one for you.
Oh, we certainly do. And today, let's take a look into the future, because Dre, you're our person that can look into the future. You can tell us what the Broncos are going to need. You can even tell us who the Broncos are going to draft probably about 5 years out. But we're only looking 1 year in the future now. Kind of a good reset at near the end of the offseason program, right before the summer break for the Broncos, and just taking a look at, okay, we've looked at the right tackle battle. We've looked at the inside linebacker position. We've looked at who the Broncos' backup cornerback is, and yada, yada, yada. We've done that for this team this year. But George Paton, he's looking at next year. He's probably not looking at 2024 yet, but he's looking at 2023. And so let's put our GM cap on. And to do that, let's go around and see what positions of need the Broncos have. Obviously, there's some very easy ones that will get out of the way right away. The position battles that the Broncos have this year, and maybe a few others, but then there may be some more in the weeds. So let's start off with the obvious ones, Dre. And I look at a spot where the Broncos have now had or mentioned 4 different people potentially being the starter this year. And that is right tackle. Billy Turner, he, in my mind, is going to be the starter this year, but he hasn't played at all this offseason. He has a giant thing on his leg. I should say a sleeve. It's not a brace. He's only getting paid $2.5 million, though, in guaranteed money up to $5 million. So that's important to remember. Only a 1-year deal. Tom Compton, number 2. He's only getting a couple $1 million a year to be on this team. 1-year deal. And number 3, Calvin Anderson. He's getting less than a couple $1 million a year. And and he is only on a 1-year deal. And the Broncos this offseason have had Ben Braden, a backup offensive lineman from the Packers. When he was signed, nobody spent time talking about him. He spent the majority of reps at right tackle this offseason, so you got to throw him in there as well. He's only on a 1-year deal as well. So that, to me, is just the super obvious one, Dre.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's been a need since Orlando Franklin.
Oh my God. Are we talking a decade almost?
Yeah. So that's 2013, basically, I think we're talking about.
Wow.
So that's for perspective, when Nathan McKinnon was drafted.
Oh my gosh. That's
That's
actually crazy. I view Nathan McKinnon as still like a really young player. Now I know that he's not he wasn't Garrett Bowles drafted at like 25 years old. I know he was drafted super young, but dang.
Yeah, I mean, we were just doing a draft pod, so I've got this on my mind. But yeah, NHL rebuilds way more long term than NFL rebuilds. It's a microwave sport. But yeah, it's been a minute. That would make, I mean, I wouldn't want to face that rotation of right tackles in a 4-on-4 battle, you know, like out on the blacktop in downtown Denver, you know. That'd be, I bet those guys can hoop. I bet those guys could run a blacktop for a couple hours. But as protecting your franchise quarterback, a quarterback who by week 1 we imagine is the paid quarterback in the NFL, maybe the highest paid athlete in all of football. Marissa, I will answer your call after the Broncos pod. And
thanks for tuning in, Marissa.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Love the support. So yeah, you gotta patch up the right tackle spot, and you'll see how much of a difference will Russell Wilson make, because when it was Peyton at right tackle, Orlando Franklin felt a lot better than maybe Orlando Franklin actually was, right? The quarterback's going to make a big difference, and that might play into this as well.
Damn, that's a fantastic point, Dre, and something that we cannot discount. Now, the interesting thing is you're going to have to get the right tackle. And hell, maybe it is one of these 4 guys that's on the team right now, because when I say the right tackle, I don't necessarily mean just the greatest. And what's important to remember in this conversation, which I didn't remember until about 2 minutes before the show started, and I told Dre, oh, wow, scratch what we were going to talk about a little bit, because the Broncos can't go out and get a top 10 tackle in the draft next year. They can't even go get a second-round tackle in the draft next year. They don't pick until the 3rd round. We thought it was long. Wait until pick 64 this year. Dre, you're going to have to be doing mock drafts going to pick like 98 in order to get to the Broncos' first draft. Typically in years past, Broncos have had like 6 picks until leading up to the 98th pick. Now we're going to be waiting. So it would be great to get a top right tackle, but also you're not going to have that much money to be able to spend, especially if you sign Russell Wilson up to a mega deal this year. His cap number is going to be small this year, but then it's going to climb next year. So if they wait until next year to sign him to a deal, maybe a little more space. But my point being at right tackle is, A, you might not just be able to get like an absolute stud, but B, Russell Wilson is going to raise the level of play of this offensive line, where you shouldn't have to have absolute studs at all 5 positions in order to have a really good offensive line. But then C is about finding the right guy. And what I mean by that is you got to get an athletic guy. You got to get a guy that has some stamina. You're probably, as much as I love Alabama football players, probably not going and getting out 6'6", 360-pound tackles. You're probably getting more finesse guys that can move. That fits in, one, with Nathaniel Hackett's zone blocking scheme about getting out to the outside, stretching, but then 2, being able to drop 10 yards in order to block Joey Bosa and these speed rushers coming off the edge, because Russ is going to be moving like crazy. So if George Payton, that might be his biggest challenge in this year, is finding someone in the draft or finding that right tackle in free agency who's good but great in the system. And that way it's not going to cost you a ton. And man, Dre, my mind is blown that the Broncos haven't had a right tackle since 2013.
It's been forever, but you're right. We were all raised on that Shanahan stretch zone offense, and that's where Nathaniel Hackett's value is going to come into play, is how can his scheme make up for, by a mile, the biggest offensive need that this team has now going into the 2023 offseason. And I'm going to venture going into the 2024 offseason as well, because that's really going to be the first next window of being able to add more blue chip. Because the opportunity cost and lack of real monumental upgrades are massive in all this. And I think this also sets up to, you're really hoping Billy Turner can find what people saw in him when he was such a highly touted free agent, 3 off seasons ago, because that's
paid.
Yes, that's your best route to success.
And not just that, Dre, that would be Nathaniel Hackett's dream. Nathaniel Hackett and Billy Turner, at least with just covering the Broncos for me these past 6 years, they probably have the best relationship, true relationship, not just football relationship, personal relationship of any coach and player that I have ever seen. And so to me, Nathaniel Hackett, Billy Turner is going to get the benefit of the doubt in this competition, but then also he's going to get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to after this year, what's going to happen with him. And so that, without a question, and then you throw the icing on the cake of it of, you now have a quarterback. You now have a quarterback that you have to protect. Yeah. What's one thing that pissed Russell Wilson off? They didn't invest in offensive line. And so what happens when you don't invest in offensive line? They're not very good. And that's what happened in Seattle. That's the last thing the Broncos can do is do exactly what Seattle did. Yeah, Russ, we're not really going to give you an extension for a while. You can ask for one for a couple of years before we're going to give you one. And also, don't ask for offensive linemen. Don't ask for position players. Don't ask for any of that. No, the Broncos cannot do that. And the Broncos are already on a pretty good path with having significant investments along the offensive line outside of right tackle. Okay, so Dre, that's the biggest need on offense going into 2023. We both agree with that. Easy. What about on defense? What's the biggest need on defense going into next year?
Defense is a much more interesting topic, because you could go for the more obvious one, like right tackle is. Offensively, just go to the biggest position battle on the defensive side, or the most open position battle, because it's kind of like similar to right tackle, lack of real options is the off-ball linebacker battle, right? But then you get into the real value of that position, especially in a team that's trying to contend right now in a division that's gone full-blown modern football. We are going to attack through the air. We are going to make defending through the air the number one priority. And that's where you could really make an argument for cornerback. And I mean, between Randy Gregory's history of sustained production at the NFL level, or lack thereof, the injuries he's overcoming this offseason, Bradley Chubb's injury history, I think there could be a case for edge rusher as a dark horse meat spot going into 23.
It's crazy, Dre. When you look at the defensive side, George Payton, give him credit, has done a good job of plugging holes for this year. You peel this year back, and I could pretty much look at every single position on the defense. Of course, I'm not looking at cornerback 1 or safety 1. Right. Outside of that, you may be looking at literally everything, which is scary, but also on the defensive side, there is a lot of hope and talent there to fill in for cornerback 2, to fill in on the defensive line. But there's a lot of uncertainty, literally outside of those 2 positions. I guess Nick Bonito being a second round pick, you should be able to count on him, honestly, to be a starter next year. You just don't know. There's a chance that maybe he's not a starter. Maybe Randy Gregory is certainly a starter next year, because he really has that 2-year guarantee. Bradley Chubb, though, not necessarily. But if Bradley Chubb comes out and has a monster season, the Broncos would want to keep him around. So it's not crazy to say that Nick Bonito's a backup. But outside of that, everything could be a need. And let's just go position by position and try to rank these, because Dre, the Broncos have said for many years, haven't publicly said, but have privately said with their actions, this is Kareem Jackson's final year with the team, giving him 1-year deals, pay cut, pay cut, pay cut. I think this is Kareem Jackson's last year with the team, but I guess they could just turn around and do the exact same thing next year. Give him vet min for 1 season if they don't like the production of Caden Stearns. But I really think Caden Stearns and PJ Locke, one of those guys is going to step up enough to feel comfortable with letting Kareem Jackson go. And I would honestly say if the Broncos had a first-round pick, that could be a safety next year. But that's a position where they're probably just going to have to say, we're going to go with guys we like, not guys we love.
Yeah, that's right. And I will say the safety position, especially that strong safety spot, has been one that the NFL has proved you can find premier guys later on in the draft. And that's because I think it's one of those positions where measurables and athleticism can be like tremendously overrated, and it's actually IQ that generates so much of the importance of that position. So if you find the right IQ guy, it's the right guy at the right spot, that can make up for that, you can find it. And you've also got the thing where if you're going strong safety, the traits you are looking for aren't as valuable traits, so you are more likely to find fillers. And you can kind of, you could go one route and convert a corner like you did Kareem Jackson. You could go another if you want to go big box safety and, find the next Sua Cravens type, who's kind of a linebacker who gets converted to safety. Try that kind of thing. It's also just not like if you were to rank the most important positions in modern football, where does that non-deep safety spot rank? Like it's the 9th, 10th, or 11th most valuable spot.
It's a great point. It's a great point. And also, you have a stud, a star, the second highest paid safety in Justin Simmons next to him. Yeah. So this will be viewed as a need, but it's not a pressing need. And in fact, Dre, if the Broncos did not bring Kareem Jackson back, I don't think anyone would be saying that the Broncos have a glaring need at safety this year because of what Caden Stearns showed. And PJ Locke, he is someone where I'm not saying he's going to be a next stud safety, but he is going to make this team as a backup. He has taken a lot of good steps, and I feel comfortable that the Broncos would feel comfortable with him playing a game or two to fill in. So safety, not really a big need going into next year. Want to move a little closer to the defensive line with cornerback, though, Dre. Patrick Surtain, that's enough. We've talked about the number one cornerback. All we need to, because he is easily the number one cornerback. No need there. Ronald Darby is going on a year where the Broncos could move on from him after this year. They could also keep him for $10 million after this year. But we talk about the salary cap, and Broncos may need to shed a few pieces. Don't expect them to be big players in free agency next year, because they're going to be signing their own guys and not going to have much money to do anything else. But in fact, they may need to cut some corners here and there, and Ronald Darby could be that guy. However, if not, Ronald Darby, I think, is a really good number 2 cornerback. They got K'Wan Williams as well. So those two guys I really like in their positions. But if the Broncos need to, they could open up some room. However, what Michael Ojemudia is doing this offseason can't be overlooked. Now, it could come to the season, and he could get burned a couple of times like we've seen in the past, and he could get injured like we've seen last year. But he finished the season really strong last year in that final game of the season. And this offseason, he's been making plays. Pat Surtain said he's the guy that's caught his eye and attention this offseason. And I believe it too, because he got beat by by Tim Patrick on one play earlier this week. But then otherwise, he's been with the starters a ton, Dre. And so to me, you're always going to need cornerback depth. But if things don't even have to go right between Ronald Darby, K'Wan Williams, and Michael Ojemudia, you should have a good enough 3 to second and third cornerback going into next year.
I mean, it's just one of those positions where you need three like really reliable starters, and then you need like two backups you really
Yeah.
trust. That I mean, just in the context of being a contender, playing in the AFC West, that those are the stakes. Those are kind of how the numbers stack up. But yeah, I mean, all of this is setting up to be the biggest opportunities at all these biggest need spots are for guys in house. And I mean, unique opportunities for guys like Billy Turner, Calvin Anderson, Caden Stearns, PJ Locke. You know, we didn't talk about it so much, but I think in the edge discussion, Browning and Cooper are huge factors in that, you know. And here you've got some great opportunities for Michael O. So yeah, this but that to me is real like sneaky could be top need because you worry that against great offenses teams will just go away from PS2 and it could be trouble.
Yeah, and that's going to be something that's exposed pretty darn quickly because I think teams going into this year are going to say, yeah, we're not throwing to your lockdown playmaking cornerback. We're going to just throw to the other side. And I do think those guys have the talent to be good enough going into next year as well, especially when you look at Ronald Darby's deal, $10 million for a good number 2 cornerback. You'll take it. That's not something, that's not a hole that you want to open up where then you actually have to go pay a guy $15 million on the open market. But that position, the Broncos, there's going to be a little gamble on what they do on if they cut a good guy to see if they can get, a better one in the third, if they cut Ronald Darby because they believe in Michael O.J. Mudia. And so the Broncos are gambling. And if you want to place a couple of bets on the sports that are going on in this world, you check out our friends over at DraftKings Sportsbook. And I said it to lead off this show. $150 in free bets is yours if you bet $5 on any NBA Finals game. And all you have to do, plus a $5 money line bet, either on the Celtics or the Warriors. That's all you have to do. You get $150 in free bets. And then any of the winnings that come off of those bets as well. Dre, I'm going to die on this hill, and I'm getting a little nervous of it now, but I still like the Warriors. As Klay Thompson mentioned earlier this week, they were down 2-1 a couple of years ago, came back, no big deal. I've got decent amount of futures bets out on the Warriors, so I'm really hoping for that. And then tonight, I think they're dogs again, about plus 150. This is a must-win game for them, so I am going to hit the Warriors on that plus 150 over at DraftKings Sportsbook. And you can also get a sign-up bonus up to $1,000 by smashing the code DNVR over at DraftKings Sportsbook. They're also going to have boosts for tonight's game, so get in on that. That's what makes DraftKings Sportsbook so unique, is they're giving you so many fun boosts pretty much every single game. And then you can use all this money and all these free bets for the Avs Stanley Cup run. So check them out over at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
Boom.
Are you waiting for me? Are you waiting for me?
I'm waiting for you, or I can jump in.
Zach sends me notes, and there are so many things on it. It's I need like 20 minutes of prep to.
It's very true. It's very true. It's overwhelming. But Dre, one thing we announced yesterday that the DNVR bar, we've got some exciting things happening over at the DNVR bar. So we're going to be closed actually every day except when the Colorado Avalanche are playing. Then we're going to be throwing the biggest party in town. So when the Avs play, we still don't know when because the Rangers and Lightning can't close the series out. But whenever they're playing, we are going to be not only open, but throwing the biggest party. So if you're in Denver, you got to come to the DNVR bar for an Avs game. Whether you're a diehard or whether you're a bandwagon fan, everyone is welcome. And that's just what makes it fun, is we're just going to have so many different types of fans, and we got so much stuff going on. So come by the bar. Dre, we've even had a couple people reach out to us this week saying, yeah, I don't live in Denver. Heck, I don't even live in Colorado, but I'm going to be there for an Avs game. So book your tickets when we find out those days. Come and hang out with us. And of course, you can also join us at thednvr.com, where we have so much content on the Avs, Nuggets, Broncos, Rapids, or Rockies, Buffs, Rams, everything you can think of when it comes to Colorado sports. We got it all. And when you sign up for an annual membership, you get a free t-shirt. So check us out over at thednvr.com. And Dre, when you're at the bar, you got to have some Breckenridge beer because, of course, that is the official beer of DNVR. And like you said, got to have the Avalanche Ale because that is the drink of the season. That is the drink of the Colorado Avs playoff run that they're on right now. And the really, really cool thing that the Breckenridge Brewery is doing is they're giving 2 free playoff tickets to community stars in this community. So if you want to nominate someone to get 2 playoff tickets to the Stanley Cup Finals, they're doing it for every single Cup Finals game. All you have to do is go to breckbrew.com and support or sign someone up who you believe is a community star and deserving of this. And a really cool thing is they're giving so much money back to the community, including helping the fires that happened earlier this year. So check them out over at breckbrew.com and grab yourself some Breck Brews this weekend. All right, Dre, let's talk more about the position needs for the Broncos heading into 2023. So we've hit right tackle, we've hit safety, we've hit cornerback, inside linebacker. And Dre,
how we feeling?
You talked about how the Broncos really haven't had a right tackle since 2013. The Broncos really haven't had an inside linebacker since Brandon Marshall, but I want to say even before Brandon Marshall got his bigger deal. So it was the Brandon Marshall, Danny Trevathan days. They haven't had an inside linebacker that they have committed to and really liked since Brandon Marshall. Now, Josie Jewell, they committed a lot of money to and a good amount of money. They really like him this year. He got a 2-year, $11 million deal, $6 million guaranteed. So this year, they really love Josie Jewell. We're looking at next year, though. They could move on from Josie. If Josie comes out and has a good season, I think he's back next year. But if he comes out and he gets hurt again or has a little underwhelming of a season or tight ends are burning him in the pass game, then they could move on from him. And then Jonas Griffith right now is the other starter for the Broncos. And he's maybe the biggest question mark on this team. He has a very high ceiling because his physical traits are off the charts. And I really liked what I saw from him last year. So did the Broncos. But it's also naive to say that we don't know what his floor is. It could be pretty darn low, and teams could expose him. So in terms of a position where there's multiple positions we're talking about, this is as big of a question mark as any.
It's a massive question mark. They've kind of, at the same time, that's been their approach, though, is we're not really going to address this. We are going to patch it up and figure that out. It seems like they have this. You have the guys who can kind of be found on the street, your thumpers, your question marks, they have the traits, but we have to see it on tape. What they're missing is that little cover guy, which maybe Justin Sternot can be that guy this season, but who can be that coverage linebacker on the downs that matter? Because no disrespect to Josie Jewell, but I think Josie Jewell and Jonas Griffith, those guys can kind of be found. Any year on an NFL roster, you can find guys like that to fit that hole. But where's that guy who can be a little bit more of a playmaker, who can force Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes to hold that ball a split second longer on that little dump off or that crosser, and allows a guy like Randy Gregory or Draymond Jones to get to the quarterback or get that pressure and make that big play? Where's that guy that's going to affect the timing on third down? Just that extra split second that makes a difference. I don't know that guy is there. And that's why this could be a sneaky big need. But at the same time, the team itself has told us, no, not really.
Yeah, just time and time. John Elway told us, no, not really for a long time. George Payton, even with Vic Fangio, he could have drafted Micah Parsons, and that would have been a hell of a pick. Look, I don't think the Broncos were wrong in choosing Pat Surtain over Micah Parsons. I don't think they would have been wrong in choosing Micah Parsons over Pat Surtain. But George Payton in his first draft said, yeah, no, we're going to go with the cornerback instead. Love Pat Surtain and what he brings, but that would have been an opportunity to get a big time player on the inside. And they chose to go cornerback instead, which I completely understand. And you just wonder, it's probably going to be like this for many more years. I mean, we may be talking about the inside linebacker position in a couple of years, like we're talking about right tackle. Oh, they haven't had anyone in a decade that they've really committed to long term. And because you're not going to get that position, that difference maker in the first or second round next year, maybe we're talking about it in 2024, but that's again 2 seasons away. So that's something where Jonas Griffith could become that difference maker. Justin Strnad, the Broncos really hoped, and Vic Fangio really liked Justin Strnad. Vic's not here anymore, and Justin just unfortunately with the injuries hasn't been able to show up, but there is still hope that he could come in and be that coverage linebacker. There's no doubt about it, but it's up to those 2 guys. And I would say right now, Jonas Griffith is the guy that has the best chance because he's getting the opportunity now. So that is just a massive one that they may not even fill going into next year.
And now Baron Browning, the other X factor in that, right, Zach?
Yes,
Sorry to cut you off.
Dre, he would be the difference maker that I'm saying. And I'm saying if Baron Browning's an inside linebacker, I'm saying the Broncos don't have a need at inside linebacker at all going into this year or into 2023. But the Broncos just maintain that he's going to stay at outside, which just blows my mind. Yeah. And so let's talk about that outside spot, Dre. And first, I mean, you're a draft guy. You covered Baron Browning coming out of the draft. What do you think of this decision? And do you actually think outside could fit him better?
It could. It could, and it really comes down to a lot of what I've been talking about with these needs and the value of those needs. The Baron Browning's real value as a prospect came in his third down value because he could A, get after the quarterback, or B, drop in coverage and stay with guys, very mobile, sideline to sideline, what have you. So some real third down value. And I would argue that third down value can most be maximized when you put him at outside linebacker. That said, I think part of that value comes in him being more of a true outside linebacker than a true edge rusher. So kind of keeping the quarterback guessing on, is he coming, is he dropping, and using him in a variety of ways, and maybe more NASCAR packages, maybe more packages where, he's going to surprise you and be the off-ball linebacker on this third down, but he still might be coming and Nick Bonito's dropped because he was on the edge and he has similar coverage versatility. So it's like all these versatile guys. The value's in the eye of the beholder. And if you use them the right way, you are going to unlock a tremendous weapon. If instead you limit him and kind of have him stuck in a box, you are very much going to limit his ability and his overall value.
And I mean, isn't that just why these teams jump on the Isaiah Simmons and jump on the Micah Parsons, as they see, oh my gosh, this guy can do it all. He's so versatile. And now we see that it certainly can be a swing and a home run. Micah Parsons is already one of the best defensive players in the NFL right now. One of the weapons, a chess piece that you can just use everywhere. I've just been in Denver for too many years and only seen how moving guys and moving positions does not work. Now, I do have to remind myself that just because it hasn't worked with other guys doesn't mean that it's not going to work with other guys. And so, Dre, I think the perfect role for Baron Browning this year, especially with them working him at outside linebacker, is exactly what you're talking about. And so I absolutely love that potential. But we're not talking about Baron Browning being a starter. We're probably not even talking about Baron Browning being the top outside linebacker of this group. And man, when you look at this group, I mean, this is cornerback on steroids in terms of like, they could have it all figured out going into next year, going into 2024, going into 2025, or they could be looking next year and saying, okay, this was our biggest need coming into 2022. It's also our biggest need coming into 2023.
Yeah, because unlike corner, you don't have that one set and forget blue chipper that is kind of the anchor of the whole unit. Corner, at least you have PS2. The other guys are maybe a little more uncertain than who you have at edge. But you don't have that. That was the thing about having Vaughn, or the thing about having Champ for years. A lot of the corners Champ played with kind of sucked. But it was like, well, at least you got Champ. It helps when one guy can shut down the other half of the field. Like, yeah, it sucks that the other half, they're wide open 24/7, but we can figure that out. At least it's one half instead of both halves of the field. And that's kind of edge. Like, you need Chubb or Randy Gregory to become that anchor. And if they're not, yeah, you're going to have to run it back and keep trying to seek that guy who can really be, the anchor of that entire pass rush unit, essentially.
And what's crazy is, I don't think it's crazy to say next year the starting outside linebackers are Nick Bonito and Baron Browning. If Baron Browning shows enough, then you would way rather than the risk way paid off for the Broncos, because you'd rather have him be a stud at outside linebacker than a stud at inside linebacker because of that position value that you were talking about, Dre. And Nick Bonito, that was not good news for Bradley Chubb when the Broncos drafted Nick Bonito with their first pick in this draft this year. And he does need to develop. That's why he's actually in a fantastic position. He does not need to be a 3-down player. He needs to be a pass rush specialist this year while adding weight and making sure that he does not lose his ability as a speed rusher. And so this year, but then also, let's say Bradley Chubb comes out and is an absolute stud. Well, you're stuck with Randy Gregory for another year. And if Randy Gregory plays well, you're not stuck with him. You really like it. You're not moving on from Nick Bonito, obviously. And if one of these other 3 guys, Malik Reed, Jonathan Cooper, or Baron Browning comes, you are 4 deep. You are talking about the 2015 Broncos, the 2014 Broncos, where you have DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller, and then you legitimately have 2 other great players that would be starters pretty much for every other team in the league, with Shane Ray and Shaq Barrett. You would have that here, and boy, is that what the Broncos are trying to do. Then there's zero need. In fact, Dre, you might be looking to trade Bradley Chubb for
That's what I was going to
future
say.
first-round pick. You may be trying to trade not Nick Bonito, maybe Baron Browning, maybe a Jonathan Cooper for a day 2 pick. You'll be doing that. And then on the flip side, if things don't work out, and let's say Randy Gregory just doesn't have that good of a season because he's not playing so far right now, injured, Brad Chubb, so that, then going this with John Cooper, we'll see what he does this year. I don't think he's going to get a lot of playing time. And a young Nick Bonito, then you could easily be saying the first pick that the Broncos have. In fact, they need to trade up into the 2nd round to go and get another Nick Bonito to pair across from Nick Bonito as well.
Yeah, it could totally make or break this defense. And you also wonder, as we're talking this out, Browning, Bonito, coming from a Rams defense that really liked more mobile edges like Leonard Floyd, Von Miller, if that's kind of the direction you're going in. Now, Bradley Chubb, big edge, very stout run defender, but in college, you liked his all-around game, including how he dropped in coverage. So I'm not trying to box Chubb as some rigid edge who's not going to be able to do the stuff those guys do. Potentially, you have just insane depth and a real stable of blue chippers. And then even after, being 4 deep, you still have guys like Malik Reed who can give you a couple nice pass rush sets and get after it. So yeah, edge could be a big one. It could also be a strength of this defense, and Broncos are certainly counting on that. The other part of the defensive line, I don't know, Zach. I don't know.
Let's talk about it, Dre, because the other part of the defensive line is really interesting, and just something when I think about this, I just think regardless, it's not that big of a need, just because defensive line for most teams in the NFL is not going to be a top priority. It's kind of like we talked about, or you really talked about with the strong safety position. Even if you have a massive hole there, unless there's a fantastic player in the draft, you're probably not prioritizing it that much, especially next to Justin Simmons. If your outside linebackers are really good, and you have DJ Jones going into the 2023 season as well, you don't have to prioritize it that much, but you may be without Draymond Jones next year. He could go and get paid, and that is a position where if you're paying Bradley Chubb, you're not paying Draymond Jones. If you pay Draymond Jones, you're probably not paying Bradley Chubb. And you honestly may not pay either of those guys because those guys could be upwards of like 30 to 40 million dollars, which is just wild. And then outside of DJ Jones, you got a lot of pieces, but a lot of quality backup pieces. I guess kind of an X factor here, but it's not even really an X factor. It is any the Broncos' 4th round pick, defensive lineman. I think he should be a starter next year, but it's very unfair for me to say he's like a stud next year. So I think you got one starter for next year in DJ Jones, and then maybe 2 other ones, but I just don't want to count on Draymond because I think he could go and get the bag somewhere.
Yeah, Draymond kind of holds the keys to that position this season, but you need Draymond to break out, but you kind of need like a mid breakout because you don't, if I may an Avs analogy, like you can't have him be Kadri, like where it's like Kadri just hit a point where it was like, oh shit, he's just played his way out of us being able to afford him. And yeah, that could be very possible with Draymond Jones. Interesting, the Sophie's choice you envision of a Chubb versus Draymond, which could be very intriguing. Would you be able to cut like Darby and Josie Jewell to kind of save like 16 mil to make it happen? But depends how big those guys break out, because those positions you break out too far. And I think you're right. To some extent, it's not a need. Certainly not on 1st and 2nd down. If you're a top contender, though, trying to make that jump and you lose Draymond, on 3rd down, not having a guy opposite DJ Jones to rush the passer could actually turn into be a pretty big deal.
It's a really good point. It's a really good point, Dre. And so we just went through the entire defense, and there's potential and honestly likely holes at most position just because there's 2 guys that you can count on and the rest are all up for grabs. What's going to we're going to find out this year, Dre, is just exactly we're going to be able to then stack those needs after this year at which guys break out, which guys don't. Now on the offensive side, we've only mentioned one, and we can go through this pretty quick here. Obviously quarterback, nope, thankfully don't have to think about that for the next decade. We running back, that is going to be the exact same need as it was this year. It's going to be, okay, do you bring Melvin Gordon back again for a 1-year, $2 million deal? Do you go and in the 5th round, go and get a running back? I know there was some talk about, 3rd round, 4th round running backs this year, but with Javonte Williams having another year under his belt, he really should be that guy. He should be established to be that guy. So running back, very, very small in my mind. Dre, any disagreements?
No, absolutely. And it's one of those positions where you can find your backup at the amount of cap they will have and at the range in the draft they actually will have picks. So it's kind of a non-need.
Yeah. Not really. Dulce is going to get a year or 2 to be the next year. They're going to view him as the guy, unless things go catastrophically wrong this year. They're going to view him as the guy. Hopefully, Albertosa. That actually sneaky is not a need, where it was one of the Broncos' biggest needs this year. I don't think that's going to be a need. And even if it appears like it's going to be a need this year, I think they just say, let's put that position on the back burner for one more year.
And it's just one of those where it's like, we're going to have to find guys like, I don't know, an OJ Howard, like kind of that bust who needs a second, or that vet who's hunting for a title and is willing to take less money and is dealing with injuries, the Zach Ertz type of route. You're just going to have to get creative and leverage the fact that you have Russell Wilson as your quarterback to your advantage.
Bingo. And now another position you could do that with is wide receiver. Initially, on paper, no need at wide receiver. Move on, done deal, close the book. Don't even think about the receiver position for a couple of years. Unfortunately, there's just been a couple of times this offseason where I've gone, wait. KJ Hamler isn't working because they're bringing him back slowly, but he's not working. And we've said this whole offseason, we're not counting on him this year. Not because of anything KJ's done, but it's just his injury history is something scary that you don't want to count on. And then I see Jerry Jeudy earlier this week walk off, really struggling to walk off with the groin injury. It's a little tweak, and it just makes me think, okay, that groin injury isn't going to keep Jerry Jeudy out this season. It's not going to limit him once the season comes around. But we haven't necessarily counted on him these past couple of years, his first 2 years in the league. So what if that does happen? Courtland Sutton, and I'm touching wood right now. Courtland Sutton's gotten hurt in the past as well. This season could be very concerning for the wide receiver room. If you probably have to have 2 bad breaks, but it's not crazy to say that could happen. The only person that has consistently stayed healthy and really has consistently been a baller in that room is Tim Patrick. I think you can count on him. The other 3 guys, if you have one thing that goes wrong, that's fine. You can accept it and you can move into next year feeling comfortable. If you have 2 things that goes wrong, it shouldn't still be a big need because you have Russell Wilson, but it's just a sneaky one.
Yeah, it's not too dissimilar to what we described at corner, honestly.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And then center is probably the only other one on offense that really stands out, right?
Yep. Center, because I mean, at the guard positions, Dre, you have 3 really young guys. Dalton Reisner can prove himself this year. This was the system that he had the best year in as a rookie. But you have 3 guys that you should be able to find 2 good ones this year moving into next year. And then kind of like we talked about the tight end position, they're going to give those guys the 2023 season before making a big splash somewhere else. So center's a big one. And then the final one, Dre, left tackle. That could be a sneaky one. It's not one I recommend cutting corners on because of everything we talked about at right tackle with Russell Wilson. But if Garrett Bowles comes out and let's say the holding is exacerbated because he has to hold on longer and have plays longer. This is something we've never said, and it's something I don't hope happens, and it's not something I think happens, but I think it's something that needs to be mentioned. He could have the most holds of his career this year. I don't think that is the craziest thing to say for a guy that has struggled with penalties in the past. And if that happens, then George Paton's going to have to look at himself and say, am I willing to spend $20 million in cap on this position when if I move on from him, I could save $12 million? That is a conversation you hope George Paton does not have to have because you want the Broncos to pay $20 million for Garrett Bowles next year. It means he had a good enough season, and left tackle is something you do not have to worry about. But if his season is underwhelming, $12 million in savings when the Broncos are going to be up against the cap is going to be something that you have to think about.
For a 30-year-old too, I mean, it starts to get to the point where those are the conversations you're going to have to start to have. I presume, Garrett Bowles is in a position where he really has as many chances to hold on to that as possible because finding a suitable replacement is really going to be hard. So you most of your eggs are in that basket and you just got to see. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not inconceivable that we could see some struggles.
Yeah, and of course, when you look at the quarterback position, the most important position, there is no needs there because of Russ, and it puts a smile on everyone's face that the Broncos have Russell Wilson. And speaking of smiles, if you want your smile to be sparkling, you got to check out our friends over at Green Mountain Dental, where if you schedule a cleaning, x-ray, and exam, you'll get a free Sonicare toothbrush just by taking care of your teeth. Look, you got to go to the dentist twice a year anyways. Got my annual check coming up next week. You might as well go to our friends over at Green Mountain Dental because not only are they going to give you a free Sonicare toothbrush by scheduling that cleaning, x-ray, exam, they're going to treat you right. They're a family-owned dentistry, and they are also big-time Colorado sports fans. So you might be talking about the Avs Stanley Cup final run when you go there. You might be talking about Russ hitting a 50-yard bomb against the Chargers with 50 seconds left to win the game in Los Angeles in front of 50,000 Broncos fans. Wow. It's a fun place to go for really not a fun thing. So go check them out over at Green Mountain Dental. Schedule that cleaning, x-ray, and exam and get a free Sonicare toothbrush. Dre, we've had great comments, support, comment section, and then really appreciate it if you hit us thumb, subscribe, turn on alerts. Those things really help us. And if you're joining us on Twitter, hop over to YouTube. It's a better stream. The comments section is easier for us to see, and the conversation's a lot better as well. So we'd really appreciate that. And if you're tuning in on iTunes or anywhere you listen to podcasts, hit us with a 5-star review. We would really appreciate that. And Dre, I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate everyone that is tuning in with us today. And let's talk to people. And let's jump into the comment section over on the website. And first one is coming in from our guy, Denver Rivals. Says, hey guys, that was a hilarious bit talking about Russ's corniness. I embrace it compared to grumpy or toxic football personalities. People were talking about the quarterback battles of Teddy and Drew last year. Now it's the dad humor battles of Russ versus Nathaniel and their dad jokes and contagious personalities. Who do you think has the best dad jokes between the two of them? On a scale of 1 to 100, how much do you want to see? How much change do you want to see with the Madden games? Great job with all the content you put out. I've said it so many times, but I'll love to see the DNVR fam support DNVR Rivals on June 26th. Dre, you are maybe the expert of dad jokes in our company. Who are you taking here?
No. Ryan would have been the one to ask here. He's not a father, but he has the dad jokes down for sure.
He's nailed that. That's for sure.
Oh, he sure has. I don't know, man. For me, it would be Hackett, who I just think is funnier. Which I think comes with the territory. Like, some of us got to get by with our humor. Others can get by with other talents. And Russ certainly has an abundance of those.
Yes, he does. And there's 2 words in dad jokes, dad and jokes. They're both dads. They've both got that personality locked on. There's another word in that, jokes. Russell Wilson's a great guy. Funny isn't on the top of the list. It's not that he's not funny, but he's not cracking jokes left and right. The 3 times we've talked to Nathaniel Hackett during OTAs, he's got on the podium and just cracked a joke before anything started. So it's going to be Nathaniel Hackett there with the dad jokes. And just what a fun household to be in with Nathaniel Hackett as your dad. DNVR Rivals chimes in again and says, one last thing. I love the location of Mile High, but I'm just embracing the inevitable change the Waltons will make to boost their value. I would worry the area where the stadium is at will really go downhill without the Broncos there. I'm just focusing on the fun football to come and the constant jokes of great value field and salty AFC West fans as the Broncos take back the West. Now support DNVR Rivals and let's ride. Dre, where do you stand with new stadium, move the stadium, keep the stadium? Where are you at?
I would keep it. That's a location that's been good to the team. It's been good to have the old Mile High, new Mile High in. And as Mr. Clark was tweeting out yesterday, the property values around that area are quite nice. As booming as any that you'll find. So, and I'm not sure they need like some giant land sprawl, which is usually what motivates a lot of these moves. So I'm not sure I see the reason, but I'm also not some real estate mogul. There might be a bigger play here of selling the current land to find a better spot in other land. But just at face value, no, I don't see a reason for it.
Man, that's a really good point, Dre, and something that we haven't talked about. We've talked about how much cheaper it would be to move out, but we haven't talked about actually selling that land.
Right.
Selling that land could pay for a good percentage of a new stadium built out there. And then also right when they buy land, the Waltons buy land out by the airport to build a new stadium. All of that land is instantly going to be a lot more valuable. It's going to be a lot more expensive. Just like it reminds me of David Tepper 4 years ago. I'm sorry. He bought the Carolina Panthers for $2.275 billion. That's a lot. The Broncos are going to pay a lot for the land that they buy out by DIA because it's going to be a lot. But just in 4 years, that his investment has over doubled because the Broncos sold by more than double. Right when they buy that plot of land, all that area is just going to be like, okay, this is the new thing in Denver. Everyone wants in. And selling the land in downtown is going to help them a lot. I've just, kind of like Denver Rivals was saying, I would like it to stay downtown. I've just already accepted that it's going to move, and
No.
it makes life easier on me because I don't have to worry about it's just not it's something that I've let off my shoulders.
Well, fine. We were talking yesterday on bets, Ryan and I, about how you are like a true king in getting out of the stadium and to the post game show at the bar in no time. What would happen if it was all the way out by the airport, Zach?
I'm hoping that Rob Walton will let me use his private jet. We can build a little runway outside the bar because that's about the only way that I'm going to get there in time for a post game show.
Yeah, exactly. Take the chopper. It's gonna be a
right?
problem, man.
Yeah.
Just telling you.
Does Spano have a chopper yet?
No chopper, no chopper.
I feel like we do have the roof for it.
See, we do.
Just have
right
to
now,
move a billboard or two.
yeah, lots of cable cords up there right now. That wouldn't be good for the chopper.
I don't think the chopper would have any problem with the cable cords. We just may not be able to go live if those are destroyed.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair point.
Mel Burrows says you all were talking about what to say after a win and loss as Henry is tired of "Let's Ride." It reminds me of how the Cubs sing the "Go Cubs Go" song after a win when there is the lyrics, "The Cubs are going to win today," and they say it after they won versus before the game. But I agree, the "Let's Ride" sounds like a pregame hype or something to say after a win. But I imagine or hope we won't be losing too much anymore with Russ as the quarterback.
He just needs a slogan. He needs a slogan like "Hook 'em horns" or "Go Hawks" or "Roll Tide." And for the Broncos, he said, "Let's ride." Some people just need to end every sentence they say or every presser with a catchphrase or a mantra of sorts, and Russ is one of those people. And for the Broncos, he's picked "Let's Ride." Literally got to ride with it, Zach.
Yeah, you literally do have to ride with it. And the thing is, it's just like his corniness. If that gets under your skin, you better make sure that it doesn't, because this is going to be the next 10 years. Russell Wilson has 100% bought into this. The Broncos have 100% bought into it. This is a thing. This is going to stay. My only question is, Dre, you mentioned it. In Seattle, his thing was "Go Hawks." And every Seahawks fan loved it. There was not cheesiness about it. There was not anything forced about it. Why isn't his thing here just "Go Broncos"? Or like, he probably would never do like "Go Donkeys," but like just something like that. No, everyone would love it.
You think? Yeah, I mean, I think it got workshopped and they decided on "Let's Ride" was better than "Go Broncos."
Do you think he realized, like, I want to be in Denver the rest of my career, but but there's a chance that I'm not. And even after that, I kind of want a life brand, a life motto. Let's ride. Look, I thought I was going to be in Seattle my whole life, so I was going to have "Go Hawks" for my whole life. But now I saw that things aren't forever. What could be forever is my own brand, we know he's all about branding. So this is kind of his way of having something, but it's not fully associated with the Broncos.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe. I think maybe you're onto something there. You made a funny thing into something disgusting and ugly. So congrats to you.
I knew we were going to have some of that dry humor, Dre. And last one to wrap us up, coming in from "Don't Call It a Comeback Kid," says, "Gents, I've been lurking in these shadows for a while, but I have to reach out now to get your inside knowledge and expertise on the upcoming training camp practices that are open to the public. First one is July 28th, going through mid-August. Y'all are aware, though. The last thing I want is to take a day off work to watch special teams and little to no Russell Wilson action. So what are the do's and don'ts from a fan's perspective to optimize the experience? Better to go in the beginning of camp? And are they more likely to do red zone practice on a Friday versus a Monday? Maybe there can be a DNVR does Dove Valley Day. Let me know." Ooh,
this almost sounds like a DNVR explainer, Zach.
Yes, it really
you can break this down. This is a great question. And, you should have
really like this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, training camp isn't like Monday through Friday with the weekends off. And it changes every single year. It changes. Sometimes they go 6 days in a row. Sometimes they go 2. Here's what I will tell you, though, and maybe I'll elaborate more in an explainer on this, is the first 6 days of camp, no pads. So if you want to see real football and pads hitting, don't come at the very beginning. Good news for you, though. It's not like there's special teams practices where that's what they do 80% of the time and Russ is only working 20% of the time. No, in terms of how much they do special teams, offense, defense is pretty much the exact same every practice. So you don't have to worry going to a practice and you're not going to see Russ. Now, what also happens is vet rest days. But that's not going to happen with Russell Wilson. Even though he is the vet on this team, he will be there at every practice. You just may not see Justin Simmons and Cortland Sutton practicing on a day. But for the most part, you should be good. Don't go to a practice, the practice after one of the preseason games. That's one I would recommend not to do. But otherwise, you should be good. You should be good. And I saw someone in the comment section on YouTube saying, can we petition the Waltons to get some shade at practice? Maybe. Or that'll come in a couple of years when they build like a training camp practice stadium out by the airport when they build everything.
Something to look forward to now. Now I'm coming back around to it. Love that.
There we go. And I loved this, Padre. Thank you so much for rolling with me today. I know you are the busy guy at DNVR, so I appreciate you taking some time to put a smile on my face, put a smile on the people's face. And thank you all so much for rolling with us this entire week on the DNVR Broncos podcast. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll be back with you next week for mandatory minicamp. Let's go and let's ride, baby.